artists. Senior living, yeah, everybody got one.
Oh, wow.
On the minutes, I'm gonna be,
Yeah, we're not gonna do them tonight because we don't have enough for a quorum.
Great.
Okay, good evening, everyone. If you take your seats, want to welcome everybody to the April Planning Board meeting. Normally, our first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, but we don't have a quorum for that tonight, so we will do the approval of the minutes at the next meeting. There are several items that are adjourned for tonight. I will read them. These are continuations of public hearings. Michael Degan, 86 Crest Drive, additions and alterations to a single-family home. Peter Bartolacci, 67 Miller Avenue, removal of a railroad tie wall and construction of retaining walls. Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Mary, 32 Warren Avenue, for driveway widening, construction of retaining walls, and demolition of existing structure. So the first continuation of public hearing tonight is Artist Senior Living.
Well, this is a new mic, so I will.
Oh, yes,
Do
wow,
my best to-
space age stuff.
We're on the
Wow.
radio with that.
Yeah, it looks
I've
like
never had
a,
anything quite like this,
it looks like a 1920s radio mic.
or at least Georgetown, 1965.
Yes.
First privilege of standing behind one. Don Walsh, Development Strategies in White Plains, on behalf of Crescent, which is Silverman Realty Group's ownership group, and their contract vendee, Artist Senior Living. With me tonight is Mark Fry, who has been instrumental in putting together the SDEIS, which is currently in the final process of being revised. This is only an appearance just to update the entire board. As you may remember, at the last meeting, we had received, after you had consulted with staff had sent us via Mr. Gallivan, which was input from Mr. Pinella and Ms. Salantis, the suggested changes, revisions, etc. We have worked assiduously on those. At the same time, other matters have come up. There was a protocol between the engineers, Mr. Pinella, and our engineer, Mr. Williams, all which is being included in what we're doing. What we have submitted back again, we finally got the engineering material we were looking for last Thursday. We blended it in, got it over to Bob. Nothing has been reviewed yet because it just got over to him. What we were looking to do is perhaps have a brief discussion as to looking ahead. You have your own staff now will review those items that have gone back. That is my understanding. They will then be in a position to recommend whether or not we are complete. The next step is looking ahead to setting a public hearing date. We have almost 5 weeks before the next regular scheduled board meeting, which I believe is the 29th, correct? Which is a Wednesday night. So I'd ask the board to think a little bit, maybe with input from your planner, as to what would be looking ahead too much to actually schedule that contingent on them reporting to you on the completeness. And then obviously, if it wasn't complete in their minds and we had to submit more, that would just simply be put over for another month. If it is, so much the better, and we're a step up and can continue. We are driving to get this done. We are not driving this on a time basis. We are fully aware, based on our schedule in 2003 to 2005, on the original FEI, on the original DEIS and then FEIS, it does take several months. This is only looking ahead to get the matter started. So I would ask, if the board can entertain between themselves what they think would be a good way to proceed from this point. And Mr. Fry will be able to, don't do anything yet, we'll be able to meet him, give us his deadline, and then we can take a look and see what our timing is. Thank you.
again, the only deadline is what the board considers to be a deadline, but
Agreed.
that's, okay. I just wanted to put down the record.
Absolutely.
Okay. I just received the SCIS this morning over morning coffee, so it was a wonderful beginning of the day. I haven't looked at it. I need to be able to review it, and then I'll work with Kathy and Dan on whether everything is adequate in terms of their comments. It's completely up to the board what they want to do. I would think that we really shouldn't be under any deadline on our own part. That's up to them. It's, they've provided it. Now it's up to us to review, and we have to be able to review it at our own
At your own pace.
pace. Again, we have to understand that the completeness is really, not that we agree with everything. It's just a matter, has everything been addressed that we've talked about? And therefore, is it ready for prime time, so to speak? Is it ready for public review? So keeping that in mind, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we would be able to come to some conclusion, but, you know, that's, and I would turn to our attorney who, I always turn to the attorney when I don't have anything else to say.
Kathy, anything to add to that?
I mean, like Bob said, we're not making any determination, we're just determining whether they've responded to all the issues raised in the scope, whether it's complete to go to that stage, and we just got it today, so I don't know if we could consider any kind of deadline. We just, I think we'll get through it by the next work session, but whether,
All right. Your next-
Whether-
The next work session, what time, what date?
no, the next work session is, no.
I think it's the
No.
15th.
I always like to ask staff, We hope the staff knows more than you do, Don.
May, June, work session the 12th.
It's late, it's the 16th.
16th,
So what time is it? What date? What's the date?
the work session?
Oh, no, sorry, I'm looking at
16th?
the wrong one.
You
The
think-
13th.
13. I think that's doable. That's doable, except if it falls on where there's a full moon or something, we have to
The
change.
16th is the Thursday, the 13th
Yeah,
is 16th.
Monday is the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait a minute.
16th, Thursday.
Am I in May?
Anybody in the audience
Oh,
here
June.
who wants to say anything
June
about
or
this?
May?
I'm going to suggest that we don't rush this process, and that, the May meeting.
The
well,
16th, yeah.
If something miraculous happens and we can have the public hearing at the April meeting,
You need to have 10 days beforehand.
yeah, I would think in general, I'd like to really give everybody a chance to weigh in on this, and maybe we tentatively schedule, if it's agreeable to the rest of the board, that the public hearing would be set for the May meeting.
You may want to be, you're at a public meeting, so.
We're on the 29th, right? So we wouldn't have 10.
I agree with that.
Speaking for the applicant, we certainly have no problem with that, and the understanding that it would probably have to be wrapped up by the work session, meaning you'd have to report from that.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, we would withdraw our request voluntarily, that would be scheduled for that, and then we'd look to get it rescheduled in June.
I think
It's fine. But this,
that's reasonable.
Yeah,
That's reasonable.
we certainly have no problem.
yeah, okay.
We will cooperate in any way, shape, or form to get this looked at a convenient time for everybody.
All right, I think once we get to our April work session, we'll have a pretty good handle on this.
Our May work session, so.
I'm sorry, the May work session.
Time is flying by this spring.
You know, Ron, you give him
Don't put
you
that
give
in
him
the-
an inch and he
don't
takes
put
a
that in
yard.
the minutes. All right, so thank you.
Thank
you
you.
for coming, all right?
So we will, if you do that, we will be in touch with Bob all along, he'll be getting reports. And we did have, I think 2 of you were there at the work session, and you may remember there was discussion of whether we get the engineering protocols done.
Right.
I'm delighted to say that Mr. Pinella took his lead there, everything was worked out that later that day, so all that's being incorporated now, everything has just gone fine as far as that's concerned. Dan, I think you're pretty good with the way you and Rich worked out.
No, that's great.
Correct. The new revised numbers indicate approximately 1,000 gallons a minute of required flow. We still have to work out the issues with the sewers, but at this point, I'm satisfied with his letter.
And you've
And
given,
our-
and you've given permission to open the manholes or some whatever?
Right. And in addition to that, our consultant has responded earlier today
I was amazed. I
that
said,
they will be, they were ready actually to do the modeling this week, but he had made a request last week. It didn't come in on time, so it's going to be starting next week.
I don't think that will be any problem. The model, everything will work out in time for the final. And we'll get that in between the engineers on both sides. So I don't, it's really, this is only procedural steps. If you work with us a little bit here to have a slight leap of faith, as you've indicated you would, If it doesn't work out because of the time it takes staff to get that reviewed, and it's a lot to do, I know, so I've been proving it, and Mark's been writing it, then we'll roll it to another month without being asked. And Bob can coordinate that with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Do we need to continue?
Yeah, we move to continue the public hearing at some point.
Second.
Yeah. On the motion?
Aye.
Next, a continuation of the public hearing is JCC on the Hudson. They are not here. Okay. I just want to mention some things to get feedback from Bob on. When I last left this, we made a list of a lot of items that had to be addressed, and I wasn't at the last work session, so I just want to check, Bob, with what's been done on this. We had asked for a response to the village engineer's comments of 13 March, and we also raised some site plan issues at that March meeting. The board did. Has any of that been dealt with by the applicant? or-
Suzanne, for example, and Suzanne has gone out on site with Dan and looked at the screening and whatever, has presented a memo that has been shared with the applicant about the screening, as well as the emergency access area, the green and green area. We haven't heard anything, unless Dan has, about the different type of, surface that Paul was talking about. Haven't heard anything about that.
And the dual use for parking and play?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything back on that.
What about the checking with the DoubleTree to allow possible use of additional parking in the back?
Again, haven't heard anything about that, unless somebody else has, you know.
There's been no communication with our office regarding this matter.
Maybe it would be wise to make sure that they know those issues need to be addressed.
They, I believe, have received this memo.
They have,
Yes.
okay, all right. So then I move we continue the public hearing.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Go
We
ahead,
have
go.
received a memo from the county planning saying that they have no objection to you being lead agency.
Oh.
And so I think you're in
So
the
then I
position
first
to
move
assume
that
lead
we
agency.
assume, given that we've already declared the action is unlisted and our intent to be lead agency, I would move at this point that we assume lead agency.
Second.
on
Hold
the-
on, I'm recused from this.
Okay, on the motion then of the three of us? Yes. So
Yes.
That passes. All right. And then I move that we continue the public hearing.
So the
Second.
next step is really getting some revised plans from the applicant
Mm-hmm.
and having him come in and address specifically the questions that you had
Mm-hmm.
addressed, and we provided all that to them.
To
so they
them,
know
so they
what
know about it.
they are.
Okay. So on the public hearing, we have a second
Yes, second.
on it?
Aye.
Yes. All right. Last is preliminary presentation, 29 South Depot Plaza. And Bob, bring us up to date. They've got the zoning text for the overlay district.
That's my understanding. I think Kathy told me. Somebody told me. I didn't make this up myself, that Rich Singerland had provided them with the draft of the legislation. And that's all I know. I don't know anything else. I'm the last to know.
Okay,
Kathy, do you know anything else?
That's it.
Or
that's it.
is there anything you want to add to this? No?
Now,
Mr. Wychee's a good attorney.
unless somebody has some comments to make, we are going to set
Someone in
a
the back,
record.
back there on the left.
A record. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Maybe a record.
A motion to adjourn.
On the
Second.
motion,
Aye.
15 minutes.
That's a record.
That's the International Planning Board record.
You gotta give some.